So we have to move on to the dreaded topic of one CM Punk, Phil Brooks, and
Yes.
kind of just from your perspective, Dave, what the last couple of days have been like since Friday, the Instagram post, and sort of just what you have taken away from it, your own reporting on this story. And obviously, like, unfortunately, you're kind of part of this story as well, which I know you don't want to be, but it's kind of
I hate
spot.
that. Well, I mean, it's become one of those things, and this in the big picture, it's like it's like one of those media things where you have two sides, and you got Fox News and CNN, and you know how much. I mean, you guys probably know because your background's similar to mine. How much I absolutely hate that type of media where it's like this side is always going to favor this, and this side's always going to favor this, and people are looking at that, and it's like I've tried to be fair on this whole thing, but people who haven't read my stuff, hear that, it's like, whatever, he's friends with this guy. And if you only knew, but that's a different issue. But the thing is, it was what happened was, there was a thing on a message board, and somebody was just like, well, the one thing you can say is that Punk, did do that one loss to Moxley clean, with no problems. And it's like, well, there was drama there, and I pointed out some of it, but in doing so, it was a message board post. It was not a story. It was not anything that I would ever said, even on the air. It was just something, you don't think of your message board post as all of a sudden being blown up. And I probably should have, and probably just should have refrained from it, but it happened, and it's there. And in the post, I didn't mention the injury. So he had like his little grounds for the injury, and he went off, and then he took it down, which I'm sure he was pressured into doing. And then everyone kind of like, what's going on, and this and that. And, I mean, whatever is going to happen, time will tell. Obviously there has been movement to have him come back. If he does not come back over this, that tells me that he really was looking for a reason not to, because this is the most, this isn't something Tony Khan said, and something Moxley or Jericho said. And, honestly, if he was mad about that, he could have contacted me. And even if he wanted to do that, I mean, it had nothing to do with Tony. It had nothing to do with Moxley. It had nothing to do with Jericho. And it was it's a very tense time. And pretty much everyone, had kind of agreed not to say anything bad about the other. And then boom, you know what I mean? It's like 2 days later, or whatever it is, someone's doing this.
Just on the reporting side, like you mentioned, like maybe you shouldn't have put it on the message board. Like if it's like there is no evidence that this was inaccurate, like it is a detail that people would state that is an important detail out there. Is it something in the sense that you just are looking at like the consequences of it, or the actual reporting of it? Because it was
no. I mean, the only thing that I feel guilty about, and I do, as everyone knows, is that when I wrote that, I should have mentioned he's also coming off an injury, because that kind of gave him the open. It's like, hey, he didn't even mention, I was injured, and he didn't really specifically go into anything. But it's like, I want to always do a thorough job, obviously. And if this was in the Observer, I would have written the whole thing as it was,
in the context, right?
And in the context that it deserved. And this was just like a flippant thing. And it wasn't, it was something from a long, long time ago in my mind. It's not like, I'm going to go revisit, everything that AEW and WWE's done 6 years ago, or even 6 months ago. I usually write what's going on now. And to me, that was what happened then. To me a dead subject. It was just that somebody brought something up, and I didn't even really need to address it, but I did. And, so that's kind of like where my thoughts are. But yeah, I know if you think that that's like an interesting story, that there was, it wasn't all smooth sailing when it comes to that. But in the end, it often never is. I mean, if you really know what's going on, as far as, in both companies, when it comes to, talent and trying to get them to do jobs and trying to do storylines that sometimes they're not happy with, there's a million things that are going on that we don't hear about. And in this case, in the end, he did lose the first match. And, him complaining about Moxley, in the end, Moxley did lose the second match. Moxley never denied that, I'll never lose to you or anything like that. He never said that. So to me, that was very unfair to try to portray Moxley as a guy who refused to lose to him.
How much pressure, I suppose, do you feel in knowing that everything that you possibly could put out on the internet could be used for a headline? how are you walking around all the time and using, your social media, like with that sort of awareness all the time, and basically just in general, like how does it feel to maybe have that sort of weight attached to all of your words?
I mean, it's in a sense, it's good, because it shows that people, listen and everything like that. I mean, but it's again, like, it's like I would rather be a guy reporting than a guy who, like, every other thing. I mean, like, again, like, if this was on Twitter, I wouldn't have said it that way. And I am conscious on Twitter, and I'm certainly conscious on audio. That everything I say, and that's good. That's fine. That's actually good for me. Or everything that I write potentially is going to be taken, and people are going to blow up on it. But that's fine. It's like when I write the Observer, I'm fully aware of this. When I'm on Twitter, I'm fully aware of this. And when I answered a post on a message board, you know what I mean? At that point, I wasn't thinking like that, because my message board stuff, I don't think I've never seen it really get out like that. So I kind of think this is just in my little community, and I was just saying something, hey, and it wasn't like it's a news story or anything. But yes, so that one is like, yeah, I'm going to have to, if I write something on the message board, it's going to have to be like an Observer story, because I don't want anyone, I don't want to leave anyone with an opening to go, he didn't mention the injury, even though, like, let's face it, everyone in the world knew he was hurt. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not a secret that was, part of the timing of everything was his injury, but I didn't say it. So, there you go.
One of the toughest parts, or maybe a frustrating part, if you're on the outside looking in, and I could certainly sense in the lead up to All Out, like, Dave, you wrote it as is, that this was brewing, this needs to be, and like everyone could see this coming, and this thread that you have started to see emerge, at least on the Punk side, is like a lot of source guessing, that it's really tough for someone in your position that you can't reveal that kind of thing. And yet
I want to tell you something. Okay. I am like, I will never do it, but man, there are certain people who I think take tremendous advantage of me knowing that I won't. And it's I mean, it's only
really, really tough.
And you can say, like, it's one thing, I mean, people who are trying to push a narrative while at the same time, being the exact opposite. So that is very frustrating. I mean, aside from that, no, not at all. That's a weird one. And that's actually something that, honestly, I mean, has only really happened in the last year. But, as far as, I mean, this situation, I guess, I mean, because you read the Observer, how far in advance I said, like, this thing's brewing and it's got to be nipped. And I had told people this months before I ever wrote it, because, I mean, basically, as very shortly after the thing happened with Cabana. And it's just like, I knew what was going on in the locker room, and people are saying this and that and whatever. But it's like, I know what people were thinking. And, you were getting people who were starting to be negative on Punk. And then once that started, it was not a good situation, because he's the top guy at the time. And then you have, it was just something that had to be addressed privately, and nipped in the bud, and wasn't. And, things happened. It got worse and worse. And, it's just what happened. I mean, look, this happens with every company, but this was unique, because it did, the dynamic of that company did change. And, it was one of those things where, I mean, people would say, like, this is the greatest place ever to work. And, it's not, now, it's, there's just drama there. And, there's always going to be some, and, they're actually doing a reality show based on it, on it now. So there's that. And I mean, one of the things about wrestling now is that people are more fascinated by, that aspect of what's going on behind the scenes, and the drama, and the attempts now where you have certain guys, and even the company as a whole, starting with the Max thing, I think, where it's like, we're going to create this drama, to, like I mean, kind of like trying to redo Brian Pillman, I guess. And and that's good if it works for you, but if it causes more problems than it's worth, it's not always the best thing. I mean, I just remember WCW when the management was always trying to work the employees, and and that to me, if you look back at, and that's what I look back on. It's like I lived through this with WCW, and in the end, it was not a good thing. So it's like that's one of those things where I know it's if you're like the idea is that we're working and manipulating everything, but you got to keep it under control, because if you have a situation where the talent no longer, especially with the Max thing, they don't know what's going on. And when they don't know what's going on, the trust level changes. And, wrestling is built on trust, especially, so I just hope that they get that thing. I hope they get that thing totally under control again. And can come up with the angle where, what we've learned this year is like, you come up with this great angle and you can turn business around it. And some people think that they've got that angle there. So it just requires everybody working together. But we'll see how that all turns out.